Hi, everyone. This is Elisa Miller. I'm your organizer for Long Island Women in Tech, and this is our fourth session of the Long Island Women in Tech Summer Series. I hope you all brought your lunch to this Lunch and Learn. We are excited to have today Elisa Miller, who will speak to us about how user experience fits into everything we do. Before we get started on the call, I wanted to take a few minutes to get you guys all acclimated with the new system that we're using today. Today we're using Event Center from Cisco WebEx, and I wanted to first thank very much my company, CA Technologies, for allowing me to use this system for free. So they are paying for the hosting of our call today, and I really do appreciate them allowing us to do that. The second thing I wanted to do here after thanking is showing you some of the tools on the right side of your screen so that you know how to engage during the conference call. So the first thing first is in the chat section. So if you go to the bottom, there is a few buttons. There's a few people buttons. Then there's a little icon that looks like a chat window. Then there's a question window. You should be able to click on those. So please, everyone, take a look at the messenger window. It says chat on it. And let me know that you can actually chat by just typing hello into the window and sending that hello to everyone. There you go. Karen can send hello. Thank you, Karen. So as you get a chance, if you can't find it, it's at the bottom of your screen, the second button from the left. And it's on the right side of your screen, and it's a little window that looks like a message icon. So if you have any questions and are having trouble doing this, then the Q&A panel is the third or fourth button on that same area. So the Q&A panel is where you can ask questions. Don't worry if you get any of this incorrect. It is okay to ask the question accidentally or chat accidentally. I will be covering both areas when we go to the Q&A section of our call, so don't worry. Hi, Karen Lewis. I see Karen from California here. Usually we do a roll call, and I want to see if we can get everyone just to tell us a little bit about where they're located today. I noticed that some of you are saying that you can't chat to all attendees. You can only do all panelists. So I will fix that for our next call. Thank you for the heads up. It's just a new system for me, so I will make sure that that doesn't happen again. All right, I have Liz Resnick here from Pasadena. Wow, we've got a bunch of Californians here. Karen Stella from Port Jazz. Hi, Karen. I know you from our previous meetups. Well, I'll let you all introduce yourselves at your leisure. In the meantime, let's get into the content of today. So first and foremost, it's so important for me to welcome you all to this group. Long Island Women in Tech was really meant for the women of Long Island, New York, which is outside of the city of New York. Network, learn, and grow while staying close to home. Many of us know that the commute into the city is upwards of an hour on the train, and it's kind of difficult to get to those after-hours events that are meetups that are offered in the city if you live on Long Island. So we built this group so that we can build those events closer to home and stay current in our tech roles while staying, on Long Island. So the interesting thing about this group is, though it was focused on Long Island, the online summer session that we've been running, we've opened up to everyone around the world. So as you can see today, we have some folks from California, and even our speaker today is in Texas. So it's exciting to have folks outside of our small network here join our call, and welcome to everyone. Okay, so just to remind everyone, in order to stay in touch on these events, we have a new website. It's womenintech.com. Please go there and click the join button. That will allow me to send emails to you directly. In addition to that, if you don't want to join in that way, you can always find us on Facebook or LinkedIn. We have our sites there. We also have a Twitter account if you're on Twitter, so just take a look and look us up. And now, on to our speaker of the day, Elisa Miller. Elisa is is a colleague of mine from CA Technologies, and I'm really excited that she had the time today to speak with us. Elisa has been in enterprise user experience and technology for years or more, right? She's one of the experts I go to when I have some challenges with work or things I should think about when I am dealing with a usability challenge. Elisa is a great coach for us at CA, and she's great at integrating user experience into the Agile methodology. So if you're in development, you understand new ways, right? But she can actually integrate UX and the thought process into the Agile methodology. So without further ado, I want to thank Elisa for joining, and I'll kick it over to her now. Hi, Elisa.
Good afternoon, everyone, and good morning to those of you who are in California. I'm delighted to be here. I've been doing work in user experience for 20 years, and prior to that, I actually worked in the integration of technology into education and training. So I've been doing the technology thing for a really long time. I'm excited because user experience is something that didn't even exist when I got my bachelor's degree or my master's degree, and it's been a really fun place to grow. Having done my first corporate website in 1995, which seems like forever ago, I like to make sure that all of my presentations are interactive, and I'm hoping that you can use the chat window. Feel free to post questions in the bottom part if you have questions, but there will be an open Q&A that we can do over the phone, and we will be unmuting all the lines for that. But I do want to ask some questions during the course of this because it's way more fun to participate. So let's get started. So this is a quote that has been put in many, many places. I recently attended a couple of conferences, and several other people were using this quote as well. And it's truly the way that I start many of my presentations. To tell you a funny little story, I started at CA almost 3 years ago, and the first thing that my colleague, who had gotten there about 6 months earlier than I had, the first thing that people said to her when she was said, "Yes, I'm here to work in user experience," and the response from most of the people in the business unit were, "Oh, you're here to make our software look good." And she and I both would laugh about that because neither one of us is a visual designer, and we come from very different backgrounds. And it took us a while for us to get this point across. And I was at an architecture summit with all of the lead product architects in January of this year. And I got up and did my thing and was talking about all of this good stuff and why user experience and that understanding is important. And I kid you not, I went to sit back down and one of the guys said, "Wow, I had absolutely no idea. I thought you guys were here to make the software look good." And our CTO, who's our Chief Technology Officer, who happened to be sitting next to me, said, "Do you ever get tired of saying the same thing over and over and over again?" And my response to him was, "You know, about the time I get tired of saying it, it'll be when they're just starting to hear the message." So it's kind of one of those things that someone who's been in the field for a long time understands. Patience is a virtue. So one of the things I find really, really important when discussing user experience, and this slide probably has more words on it than all the rest of them put together. As I said, most people have a feeling that user experience is really just interface design and visual design, when in fact we're all of these things. One of the other groups that I'm working with at CA is just starting to recognize that user experience professionals or user experience practitioners are not plug and play. There are those of us who come from a world of information science, and we understand information architecture, and we understand things like what information needs to be presented at what time to make the process useful for our users. This is a very separate thing from conducting face-to-face interviewing and field research. We have people who are content strategists. We have people who are interaction designers. So one user experience professional is not necessarily going to have the exact same skill set as another. It makes hiring a little bit challenging, particularly when you're working with hiring managers who have been told, oh, yeah, you know, we need to get some of them UX people. And they try to hire a unicorn, as we call them, or as I've heard from one of the other hiring agencies here in Texas, those user experience people who can do just about everything are known as purple squirrels because they are about that rare. So I want to start by talking a little bit about user experience kind of in general, and I'd like to get some feedback from you. And since through the chat we can't actually share with all of the attendees, as you write these in, I'll be sharing them with the rest of the group. User experience is not just about technology, and I think that's another common misperception. When you go into the bank, and some of you may not have set foot in a bank in 5 or 6 or 8 or 10 years, there may be an experience that you have there with a friendly face. There may be a line, there may not, there may be kiosks. That experience of going into a bank is really evolving. I know when I walk into my bank, there are people there who literally greet me when I walk in the door to find out what it is that I need and what do I need to do there, because people don't come so often just to cash a check or just to make a deposit. They go through the drive-through or they do everything online. So the whole idea of having an experience with your bank is one thing. And what I'd like for you to do is take a minute and put into the chat a really great experience that you've had recently. So something that was just really outstanding. And I can give you a hint. We were in a small group of us was in town for a workshop, and we were looking for a place to have dinner. And we found a restaurant, and I am telling you, we were so glad we went there. Everybody from the person who seated us to the person who brought more water to us was absolutely delightful. And it made the evening extremely pleasant, and it was just a wonderful experience. So if you would, take a minute and briefly describe an experience that you think was great that you've had in the last, say, month. And I'll read these out as they get posted. Has anyone had a really good user experience lately?
You know, Elisa, there was one that I had the other day when I had brought my children to a new hotel. We went on vacation, and our check-in process, the lady, as we walked in, we were a little nervous because we were the only ones with kids there. The lady walked around the counter and said hello to my children and gave them like a little coloring book so that we can check in quietly. It was really ease on me. I know that that's not technology focused, but that's my experience.
Well, and I was looking for great experiences that aren't technology focused. And Liz Resnick posted one about bathroom remodeling, believe it or not. She found an amazing company that made it all super easy for the customer from design to completion. Each bathroom in about a week with a very nice dedicated crew. I think that's a terrific example. So many people think of user experience as only a technology issue. And one of the things that I like to help people think through is the fact that it's not just about technology. User experience can be about everything that you do. Karen Stella said, laughing out loud, aside from the fact I found a great new hairdresser, I'm trying to choose a tech-related one, of which I have too many. Yeah, and you know, we all have good and bad. You know, I think most of us can often point to really bad experiences, both with technology as well as outside of technology. And I sometimes find it more difficult to find really good user experiences because the interesting thing about a really great user experience is sometimes it's almost invisible. You don't realize you're having a great experience. And sometimes that's a very engineered thing. We've got a little thing where we can click on the raise your hand, and I'd like for you to raise your hand if you have been to a Disney facility. So just raise your hand here. All right, one said not since 1979. And Karen also said that you don't realize that an experience with software is great if it just works. And got another one, not since I was a kid going to Disney, any of the Disney properties. Well, it's interesting. I attended a presentation, in fact, last night that a friend of mine has been doing some very interesting research in delightful user experiences. Stefana says she goes every year. So his premise is that the Disney experience is way superior to the experiences of going to most of the other amusement parks, whether it's Knott's Berry Farm or Universal or Six Flags. And one of the reasons that he supposes that people prefer to go to Disney, year or how often, is because the user experience is so delightful. There is a whole layer of things you never see because the whole experience is designed for the user. And you won't see people picking up trash. All of this stuff is like virtually invisible to you. And everything from one of the Disney properties is based on having that great, delightful, wonderful experience. Another misconception is that user experience is just about usability testing. And granted, we do a lot of usability testing. There are a number of different layers in building out technology, for example. And the first one is usually utility, particularly in the realm of all of the things that we do in the business-to-business software industry. We want to make sure that the people who use our software can accomplish the tasks that they need to accomplish. And that is our primary goal. If they can do it, that's great. If it causes them nightmares every night or anxiety on the job because it's so difficult to do, that's not so great, which is why we do things like test the usability of the interfaces. More and more in our Agile processes, and I'll talk about that a little bit, we try to test the usability of our prototypes long before we actually get to the point of building out software, because by testing prototypes, we can operate under a lean process where we try things. We can say, here's our hypothesis. We think if we build this in a certain way, then it'll be easier on the user. Now, sometimes we find that the hypothesis that we had was not correct, and that's why it's much better to do things like prototype testing and testing the usability of a prototype long before we actually go in and build out whatever it is that we're going to build out. User experience is not just about the user. I know that sounds kind of crazy, but user experience can also be about things like the environment. What do we do so that we create less waste? And while that's not necessarily an obvious thing that you might think about, it can be related to your user experience. If you go and eat fast food, the packaging that they give you, if it's packaging that can be recycled or composted, may be better for the environment than packaging that just goes and gets trashed and put into a landfill. So user experience is a much broader thing than I think some of us think about. I love this slide. My friend Lori put this slide together, and it's truly one of my favorites. And the point of this is that user experience is not easy or simple. Great user experiences are things we have to think about. As I was talking about Disney, great user experiences in that case are something that are engineered. think about the car that you drive. And I'm not going to ask you what you drive, but I want you to think about this for a minute. And I'm going to ask a couple questions. Is there something about the car that you drive that drives you crazy? I've been driving a rent car lately because I was in an accident and my car is being worked on. And there were a couple of things that were making me nuts, one of which was that if I take somebody with me, the passenger seat belt doesn't have quite the same adjustments, and if I don't sit in the right place, I feel like my neck's being cut off. Now, they obviously can't make a seat belt to fit everybody or have all of the kind of adjustments, but perhaps some additional adjustments for other people might improve something like the user experience. And especially when you talk about not simple or easy, the other thing that we're talking about with technology is that we want to create our interfaces and create our software packages to accommodate a lot of different kinds of users. We have users who are very experienced, and we'd like to build in things like shortcuts that allow them to move much more quickly through the process. Whereas someone just learning the interface is probably going to be learning all of the basics before they start to learn the tips and the tricks and the ways of moving through the interface more quickly. All right, so Stefana says it looks like everybody should be able to chat to all, so try seeing if you can chat to all of the attendees and tell me something you like or you dislike about your car. And just start with dislike or like, and let's see what everybody says. My car, love the rear camera, can't drive without it. That's from Stefana. Somebody else. I'll tell you one of the things that I like about my car, but I like the way it's done better in the rent car, is I love having the Bluetooth. But the funny thing is that the Bluetooth, you can shortcut some of the Bluetooth in my car, which I really like. This one is just quicker, doesn't ask as many questions. And because this one, the Bluetooth is integrated into the interface in the car, there are lots of other things I can do. Another thing about the one that's in the rent car is that if I'm on a call and I want to mute, I don't have to go to the phone and find the mute button. There's a mute button right there on that screen. Karen Lewis said, did you know that some cars have a height adjuster for the seat belt? Yes, and that's great. They're typically in the front seat, but not in the back seat. My biggest issue has been when I'm taking Uber or Lyft and going to the airport and I get in the back seat of something and there is no adjuster for the back seat and the seat belt. And Stefana wrote back, thank you from a fellow short person. Any other likes or dislikes about your cars? I just want you to kind of think about this for a minute. The next thing I want to hate the seat belts in the back seat, and they're difficult to buckle too. It's so true. Thanks, Stefana. Oh, and she said, Karen said, tried the new Audi. The video panel popping up out of the dash drove me crazy. And Stefana said about the seat belts, the kids can't do it themselves. So there are a lot of things that sometimes are engineered or designed very well, and in some cases not so much. The thing that I try to work with our teams on understanding is that user experience is not the responsibility of one person or one department. And it's really key in the projects that we work on that our user experience practitioners are embedded in the Agile or Scrum teams for virtually all of the projects that we work on. if you all are working in Agile teams, if you would just pop into the chat and say Agile or not Agile, I'd like to just get a sense of how many of you are working with Agile teams. Agile Safe from Stefana. Everybody else is eating lunch. That's fine. I just, I've worked in this area so long that I've worked with user experience people embedded. Oh, I love that. EDU was actual design, so I am whatever I am. I like that, Karen. Thank you. But in all of the software development, one of the things that we often found is that user experience was something that they tried to tack on at the end. Here again, thinking of it more about visual design and making the software look better. Whereas most of us think of the term design as a synonym for problem solving. And when you think about that in everything that you do, for example, you wouldn't make a three-legged table unless it was round and small and 3 legs were all you needed to keep that table stable. I don't think I would want to use a table that had 3 individual legs on each of, one of each of 3 out of the 4 corners. Don't think that would be a very stable table. And how many times have you been to a restaurant or someplace where the table did not sit level? And if you look down on the floor, there were folded napkins or, back in the day, match packages or whatever to level the table. Those are design problems. And it's not just a software problem, but they're actually about design and things that work and things that don't. And that's why it's not just the responsibility of one person or one department. What we like to say is that user experience is problem-focused. And one of the things that a user experience team member will often do with a project team is to work through and try to understand what the actual problem is. A lot of times a customer will come to us and say, we need to have this fixed. Sometimes it's not even that needs to be fixed. Sometimes it may be a process that's not working well. Sometimes they come to us with what they perceive to be a problem. I can't tell you how many times I've heard, it takes us too many clicks to accomplish our task. And to me, too many clicks is kind of like code language because they don't know exactly what's wrong. They just know that there's a problem and they don't know how to express it. So a lot of what we do at the beginning of a project is spend some time trying to figure out what the actual problem is. And as a part of that process, it really helps to go and visit with customers. We do a lot of this at CA. We're doing a lot more. And by observing our customers using our products and services, we learn infinitely more about a couple of things. One is, how do they work? What's important as a part of their tasks? Which are the key tasks? Which things do they have to get done today or tomorrow? Which are things that they may only do once a month or once a year? There may be other perspectives that they hadn't even recognized were problems, but sometimes we can walk in and view their workspace or their environment to get a better understanding of that. I can't tell you how many times I have walked into a customer's space and looked at their monitor only to find sticky notes ringing the monitor. And you look at them and you say, well, what are all these sticky notes? And they'll say, well, I only do this thing once a month, and I never remember the password or how to find it or where it is in the navigation or that kind of thing. And they write a sticky note to remind them. Karen Stella just shared a wonderful thing with, I hope everybody can see this, She said a respected author of a book on drawing states, "Draw what you know, not what you see." And she paraphrases, design what you know your client needs, not what they ask for. And clients have a really hard time sometimes articulating what it is they need. I worked, prior to CA, I had worked in healthcare software with electronic medical records, and a lot of people did not understand that a basic EMR is great, but we had to build out all kinds of configuration tools as well as some additional tools that we made available, because the way a pediatrician will use that electronic medical record will be very different from the way someone who does orthopedics. Pediatricians are very concerned with things like shot records of children, and are they up to date? When was the last one? What do they need next? And ways of tracking that kind of thing, where an orthopedic pretty much doesn't care about any of that, although they may ask you if you've had a flu shot in the last year or something. So even something like an electronic medical record, which has all the basics, it has prescribing and ordering tests and tracking what's going on with the patient, once you start getting into the specialties, things change very radically. And if you don't get in there and figure out and understand what those differences are, you can't build in the configuration tools that will make the lives easier of all the different customer groups that you have to deal with. I really love this slide, and aside from the fact that it's all this great color, you'll see that the basically green thing at the top is about functionality. The red is the business case thing, and the blue is looking at the visual design and look and feel. And if you look at all these concentric circles and how they interact, you can start to understand why user experience is something that impacts everything that we do. Business analysis, and that includes things like understanding what your competitors are doing, understanding marketing communications. We've been having some very interesting discussions with our marketing and branding people for CA, because most of what they have developed in terms of brand standards and their color standards and so forth has been for print media. And we are trying to bring in everything that we do, a consistency in things like color and so forth, but because we also want to make sure that the software we build is accessible to people who have, let's say, color blindness, we've had to work with the branding team to narrow the color palette that we use for our interfaces so that everything can be distinguished by all of the people who are using our software. And I know this is primarily a women's group, but something between 10 and 15% of men are colorblind. We may know that just by the choices of the clothes that they put on, but it is something that we don't think about the same way as others. You see the concept of prototyping, visual design and development, but then you see all of the interplay of all these other parts. We've got releases, we've got information design, we've got the concept of simplicity, we have the concept of performance. Nobody wants to sit there and use software or have an experience where you have to wait a really, really long time. And this piece is, I found this picture and was absolutely floored by it. I don't know if any of you have seen this thing before. These are apartment complexes in Singapore. And the design was a way to use the space most effectively and to make something aesthetically pleasing. My question was, user experience is built into everything, whether intentionally or not. I'm not sure how easy it would be to find somebody who lived here. So if somebody invited me to their apartment and said, yes, I live in whatever the name of this complex is, how would you tell me even where to go? There are multiple places to enter. I don't know anything about signage. To me, this might be more complex for a visitor than for somebody who lives here. And, visitors may not be the primary audience, obviously, but it could change things and how they do this. Now, here again, I don't know that there's signage or how easy it is to get around, but I just found that this was an incredible thing to look at and an incredibly complex place to live. I'm not sure how you get up into the higher ones. Are there elevators that, do you have to walk from one place to get to an elevator to go to the next level or pod or whatever? And the thing I want to drive about this is that things are designed, whether it's intentional or not. Here again, talking about cars. I think about cars from the 70s, and there were a lot of things in them that just were. They weren't necessarily intentional. Cars were built primarily for men, not women. So things like the seat belts, that we look at today, but even how far up you can move a seat. My grandmother was 5 feet tall, barely, and she always had to pull the seat all the way forward and then sit on a phone book so that she could see over the dashboard and reach the pedal. It's a little scary thinking about now. Certainly wouldn't pass any safety things now, but it's a question of, Stefana's telling me, yes, she had pillows behind your back, and her mom had that in our car. Well, my grandfather really loved big Oldsmobiles, so the Olds 98. And Liz is saying, I have a good friend who is under 5 feet, and she has to sit on a pillow too. There might be a way to fix that in the way that the seat rises up, and in some cars you have a better opportunity for that. So whether it's built in intentionally or not, I think this impacts a lot of what we do and how we live our world, both in technology as well as outside of technology. In my case, I believe that paying attention to user experience is not a choice. If we're going to work in any of these kind of fields, we need to think about this, whether we are user experience practitioners or developers or QA people or marketing people. The more we can attend to this and the more that we can think about this in the perspective of all of the things that we do, I think we make better products, we offer better services, and it makes everybody's life a lot easier. The last little piece of this that I wanted to bring up is the fact that sometimes, we attend to this stuff, but we also need to think about how we measure success. How do we know when we've gotten it right? And there are a lot of different ways we can do this. Some of you are using NPS, I'm sure. We certainly use NPS at CA. But we're now following that up with more detailed questions. We understand that, would you recommend this to a friend or a colleague or whatever is a great question. But we also, to really make great experiences, have to drill into that and find out why they're happy and or why they're unhappy. And I think that those are big things for us to consider. And I've seen this quote in a variety of different forms, but Eric is an old dear friend of mine, and I think he's right. The biggest waste of all is building something that nobody wants. And, that's either building the wrong thing or building something that the user experience is just not great. So, time for our Q&A.
Thanks again, Elisa. I'm going to unmute everyone's line, so folks, just aware as I do that, it takes a second. Okay, everyone should be unmuted now. So if you do have a question, absolutely, you can ask it through the chat or verbally. So remember, everyone, your line is unmuted now. So if you are asking a question.
All right. Well, I'll chip in. I don't have a question, but I just wanted to say thank you guys for putting this together. I found it to be a good webinar. I love the activity and from others. Thank you.
You're very welcome. So Karen wrote in, did I say NPS? She's Googling it without luck. Yes, the NPS, you'll find it if you seek under the Net Promoter Score, which Stefana just put into the box. This thing was created in the early 2000s, and we started to use it when I was at Texas Instruments and working on their website. And I went round and round with our marketing people who really wanted to use this thing. And a lot of organizations think of it as a measure to kind of get the temperature of people. And I've got some questions that have come up in the chat that I'll address in just a second. Basically what the Net Promoter Score does is it asks you, how likely are you to recommend this product, this service, this whatever it is, and you're given the numbers 1 to 10. And anybody who is an 8, 9, or 10 is a net promoter, and a 1, 2, 3, or 4 is a detractor. And what you do is you subtract the total of detractors from the total of promoters. And the 5, 6, and 7 in the middle you just pretty much ignore because it's a metric. But as a metric, it is a pretty simple one. And my question to it is always, okay, great, that's temperature. My question is why. I know of a few examples where NPS is a great thing. I think it was Avis, I don't remember for sure, but one of the car rental companies did NPS. They asked 2 questions. One was, how likely are you to recommend this location of fill in the rent car company? And then how likely are you to recommend the company? And what they did with that information was fascinating because they were able to figure out which of their locations were offering great service and which ones had problems and issues. And it was very easy for them to identify which of those locations either needed some coaching, they go in and find out what the problem was in some cases. It may be that they just were chronically understaffed. And in that case, I think NPS was a good indicator. If you come in and say, how likely are you to recommend CA Technologies, we've got so many different products and services and so many different areas, the question basically has no meaning, or the response basically has no meaning. It doesn't really tell us a whole lot. Now, if you ask about a particular product, that tends to be a more useful measure. But as a typical user experience person, my response is always going to be, why did they say that, and what can we do to make it better? All right, so when the powers that be at your company ask how much more money the company will make because of improved UX, how does one answer that when one has not been given any resources with which to perform user research? Oh my, when I send this, I'll give this deck to Stefana to send out, and I will include, there's a wonderful, wonderful slide that shows the companies that are investing in user experience and how much better they do over time for things like stock price and so forth and so on. And it's taken us a while in the industry to get that message across. First it was, we're not just making stuff look pretty. And the second thing is we need to start to integrate all of this to improve the UX. So, so one of the things I would say to you is try to find a small project where you can do some good user experience and do a little research, even if you hire somebody on a part-time basis just for that project. A lot of times what you can do is with one project show the difference in how your customers feel and think about the product or the service or whatever it is. So a lot of times I would just say, hey, we want to try this with, and name a project, particularly a high-profile one if you've got one, that's not huge, but one that can make an impact, and work with those people, work with the folks on the team to recognize this. The other thing you can do if you can't get any more resources is to pick up a book called Rocket Surgery Made Easy. It's Steve Krug's book about rocket surgery. it's really for teams that don't have UX professionals on their teams. It is a way to do some real basic research, either with a Scrum team or whatever. You don't have to get into the great details of that kind of UX, but it'll at least help get you across that. Oh, good. And Stefan has put the link right into the chat. So I think there are a few other things. I'll give you my email address if you have any other questions. Feel free to drop me a note. I'm happy to talk about it. I'm sort of our chief UX evangelist at CA, so feel free to talk to me. Kitty wanted to know, are most companies focusing on UX much, much earlier than before? I certainly hope so. It is a big deal, and it really helps us to make the impact. Because if we're brought in too late, usually the solutions are already identified, if you will, and we don't have the impact on some of the discovery stuff that we're really, really good at. All right, and we've got Karen said efficiency. One of the other ladies, I don't want to say your name because I don't want to butcher it. Well, but I might give it a shot anyway. Aluwa Toby. I'm Toby, a BA interested in user experience. I sadly haven't been able to hear any sound since I joined the meeting a few minutes ago. Stefan, I don't know how you can handle that, but Stefana is recording this, and you should be able to get the recording, and you should be able to hear everything.
So if the computer audio is not working, you can dial into the call. The dial-in information is under Event Info, the tab at the top of your screen. It provides you the dial-in. Now, of course, we're recording this, so I will share with you the recording. It will be online recording. Toby is in Nigeria, so she didn't want to dial in. Obviously, that makes sense. Next time I will provide the international dial-ins so we don't have this challenge. Good point.
So,
again, another user experience thing I have to work on.
Yep. And so, it says you're the UX designer at your company. As I said, feel free to contact me. I'm happy to respond. And that's an open invitation to any of you. Here are a couple of books I recommend if you're really interested in this. Steve Krug's Don't Make Me Think, which is a really great introduction. Emotional design, we're certainly getting more into that. For those of you who are already involved in user experience, there are some wonderful, wonderful books out now looking at all kinds of things. If you're not familiar with the Rosenfeld series, there's a couple of great new ones. One Indy Young's new book, which the name escapes me at the moment, but there's some really terrific ones. And I'm just going to go ahead and put my email address right in here. It's pretty easy. It's elisa.miller@ca.com. And you are absolutely welcome to send me a note, drop me a line. There's very little I like talking about more than user experience. And one of the things that I'm finding fascinating is I am not speaking to as many user experience groups and conferences anymore. I'm actually going out and speaking to more business conferences and agile and technology groups because they're the ones who need to hear the message. Those of us who are in user experience pretty much get it. We just need to know how to get more people involved. So I'm looking back here to see if there were any other questions that I missed or comments that I missed.
So Kitty asked or mentioned something. She said, I have heard of design teams going onto customer sites to do day in the life. What do you think of those and those kinds of exercises?
I love them. The more you can do to get out of the building. We have a thing that we have in UX called GOOB, and that means get out of the building. So the more you can go visit your customers and see what they do, see how they work, talk to them about their processes, but also observe them. That I cannot emphasize that enough. We've had some day in the life sessions, and at CA we have, as most enterprises do, there's often a difference between the person who's actually using the product and the person who's making the purchase of the product. And a lot of times when those are different people, they're looking for different things. And what we're trying to do is make the experience of the end user, the person who has to use that software, much, much better. And sometimes you wouldn't even know who those users were unless you went to that company and did the day in the life. And then you get a sense of, you know, are there administrators that are locked into, you know, are going into the program and doing certain tasks while the people who are your regular everyday folks are doing it. So that's one of the things that I would highly, highly encourage. Any other questions?
Elisa, I have a question, and you know, it's about UX and how do we fit this into our agile schedule. Obviously, you said earlier, it's move it earlier in the cycle. How does the UX team integrate into the Scrum team on the monthly Scrum, for example?
Your UX practitioner on your team, or UX practitioners, if you have more than one, should be part of the Scrum team from the very beginning. They should be participating in all of the PI planning if you're doing SAFe, backlog grooming if you're not. There are a lot of things that the UX team can bring in terms of perspective from the get-go. And while we tend to do things like work at maybe a sprint ahead, which in some teams that works great, the point is it's not like us doing a design and then throwing over the wall and letting the developers develop it, because that is not an effective practice. We found that in Waterfall. I actually have an entire presentation on integrating user experience into Agile and SAFe that I've been doing off and on for years. I've been updating it to accommodate a lot of the SAFe practices because a lot of the user experience is happening at the project level, as you mentioned, with the Scrum teams and so forth. But in SAFe, as we're starting to look at the program level and then at the portfolio level, we are starting to do research to understand how our users use multiple products in their environment. And CA, as some of you may know, has been built by doing a lot of acquisitions. So a lot of the products that we have don't necessarily play nice with each other. And while they may have been branded alike, they don't function in the same way. So a lot of the kinds of things that we're doing are to build some standards, both in visual design and interaction design, that can be applied to all of our software all the way across. And, oh my gosh, that's an old picture.
Melissa,
anyway,
that's a picture I found with you on the web.
Yes, I know. I'm a judge for a show called Expose UX, and that's one of my judge pictures. So yeah, I'm it. So as I said, feel free, drop me a line. I'm happy to hear from you.
Awesome. Well, Elisa, thank you so much. We have about 3 minutes left to the hour, so I wanted to do a quick wrap up. Thank you for taking all these questions. We have lots in the chat. What I'll try to do after this call, everyone, is post this to our LIWomenintech.com website, the recording, as well as some of the key points that we asked and answers that we got, so that'll help us get a summary of what we learned today. I wanted to call out a few activities for you to participate in, perhaps, as part of this group, either if you're local or not. One is that next week there's a Girl Power Business Camp that is looking for advisors and mentors to join. It's a single day that you would join during that week of July 18th. If anyone's in New York City or is off for half a day that can join, please let me know. I will send this out on our website on how to sign up. They're looking for mentors to help the girls who are building their new business within a week understand the intricacies of a business. The second thing on this list is that we are looking to re-template our site. So the Long Island Women in Tech site was built overnight because I had to do it very quickly, and I used a basic template from GoDaddy.com. And I'm looking to see if any of you have great CSS or HTML templates for websites. I'm looking to rebuild the site from the ground up, and a template would cut my time literally into a quarter of the time it would take. So if you do have that and that's your role, that would be awesome. Reach out to me. Next is we're looking for speakers for August. Our July schedule is packed, but August is dwindling. I know everyone goes on vacation then. So if you do know a speaker, let me know and I'll reach out to them. And last but not least, our next initiative starting in September will be a blogging initiative on the website. So we'll be posting your blogs about women in tech, new technology. So if you're interested in this, again, you can reach out. How do you reach out to me? So I will share with you the website. It's liwomenintech.com, and there's a bunch of ways to reach out to me through social media. And last but not least, our next call is a really exciting one. I'm excited to have Milena Berry, a co-founder and CEO of Power to Fly, to join us. She is a well-known industry executive, has won tons of awards for the work that she's done in our industry, and I'm really excited that she's going to be talking about the changing nature of work for women in tech. She will talk about changing nature of work overall and then really focus on tech. And Power to Fly is a great firm. They're a recruiting firm. Actually have a platform for women to use to find jobs for remote jobs. So I do recommend that you check out their platform, sign up for our next webcast. Again, Elisa, thank you for your time today. I'm sorry I didn't have time to just thank you so much for joining and giving us all this insight into user experience. And we will all chat again next week. Have a great day, everyone.